Hello, Raleigh. This is citizen reporter Robert Courts coming to you from the Your Backyard Raleigh News Network. And I'm very pleased today to have Councilmember Jonathan Lambert-Melton joining me for a post-election interview. Thank you for joining me, Mr. Councilmember Lambert-Melton.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Well, you had ran a fantastic campaign. You had a solid win, and it really says to me that the citizens of Raleigh are pleased and happy with the service you've had for your past two, and now soon to be, after next week, your third term on the council.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, it really shows your commitment to Raleigh. I know in working with you on a time or two, your knowledge of how the local government works, your knowledge of the players from the city staff to the nonprofits really has been a strength of yours, and you really have a thorough and complete understanding of how it works, and I think it shows.
Well, thank you very much. I have a nonprofit background. I did a lot of that work before I ran for office, and I'm feel very fortunate that I have that foundation to sort of build upon.
Well, I remember when I last saw you out in the public, you were doing one of your guest bartendings.
Yes.
And we had the chance to sit down afterward with my friend Amber, and you just went on and on, could answer all her questions in great detail. And it really speaks to your commitment to the job.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, in the time we have, I would like to ask you a couple of the things that we see in the immediate future. We have a semi-new council, but the dynamics are changing a little bit. Could you speak to that for a moment or two?
Yes. And so there is one new council member who was elected. He is new as a council member, but he is certainly not new to local government. His name is Mitchell Silver, Councilmember-elect Silver. He was actually the City of Raleigh planning director a while ago, and then he moved to New York and was their parks commissioner, and then he moved back. So he obviously has a good deal of knowledge for city planning and green spaces and things like that. And then, of course, we have Mayor-elect Janet Cowell, who was elected pretty substantially by the voters to come in and lead the city. And she brings her own experience, lived experience, personal experience. She was on the city council 20 or so years ago, then was in the state legislature, then state treasurer for 2 terms, then did work with Dix Park, and now will be the next mayor. And so anytime you change the ingredients a little bit, obviously the cake is a bit different. And so, there's 2 new personalities who will be at the table. They both have a lot of experience and I'm sure have different ideas. And so I look forward to working with them. But, overall, the voters sent back most of our city council. The mayor wasn't running, so we knew that seat was going to be open. And then most of the other incumbents did win re-election. And so we will have a fairly experienced council. We have folks serving 3 terms, 2 terms, I think one maybe on their 5th or 6th term. And then, of course, the 2 new folks to our council with a great deal of experience, too. So I think it'll be a different dynamic. But a lot of experience is going to be there.
Well, I think that very well put. I like the cake analogies. Might have a little bit of different flavor, but unlike some city governments and the national government, the city council is more of a board approach, and the city management is more as the CEO suite. But there's a lot of things that this experienced council has started that's starting to come to fruition. And I think that continuity of what y'all been working on for a long time, it gives the city a chance and the citizens the opportunity to really see some of the things you're working on grow and not only come to fruition, but give it its best chance at success.
That's right.
And if you don't mind me bringing up, one of those wins is the alternative response team.
Yes. Yeah, I'm very excited about that. When I was running for my 3rd term, folks would ask me, why are you running again? Quite frankly, I ask myself that a lot. And I'm not trying to be funny, but I don't think anyone should park themselves in a position for too long. But a big reason why I ran again is there were so many things that I was able to accomplish my first 2 terms. But there were a few big things that we had started, just we hadn't finished yet.
Right.
And one of those is the alternative response model. We actually got an update at our most recent council meeting, and they included in there a timeline. And I had almost forgotten that, this process was initiated in part at my request in 2019. And so that's sort of a sign of how long things sometimes take to get finished. But this was a big one that I care deeply about. And I really want to see it get across the finish line. And I expect that we will have the final program up and running within the next couple of months, certainly sometime in the early spring. And so for folks who are not familiar with alternative response, there are models like this across the country. The closest model obviously would be in Durham with their HEART program. Ours is going to be called CARES, Raleigh CARES. So Durham has HEART, we have CARES. And it does 4 things. So there's crisis call diversion, which is trained mental health clinicians embedded in our 911 call center so they can help triage and answer certain calls. It has a co-response model where officers will respond to certain calls with mental health professionals and social workers. It has aftercare navigation. So if there is a call for service and the police department makes contact with someone and they can tell that that person may need supportive services later, can connect them with the help that they need. And then there's an alternate response model where for certain calls, we may not be sending an officer at all. When folks need housing or shelter, food, maybe mental health assistance, we may just be sending a trained qualified professional. And what I think folks should understand is that piece will be housed separate from RPD, the Raleigh Police Department. So it will not be within the same department. And I know that's important to a lot of members of the community. It's going to be funded separately. So it is not taking resources or allocations from the Raleigh Police Department. I think that's important too. And I would say that I think one way I have talked about this is we need a well-trained, well-supported, fully staffed police department to deal with actual crime and safety issues. And I think if we can also stand up an alternative response unit to deal with some of these other calls for folks who just need some help and assistance and care, it is a better way to care for our community. It provides safety, and it allows our officers to have less work on their plate and to focus on the calls where there's a crime being committed. And so I think it's a win for public safety. I think it's a win for the most vulnerable residents and visitors of our city. And I think it's the right way to move forward. So I'm really excited that that'll be coming forward soon.
Well, I know you've been working on that. You mentioned since the beginning, it's been a long time coming, and it's really about to launch in a very hugely significant way. So I tip my hat to you.
Thank you.
I'll also like to speak, if you have a few more minutes, about another thing you've been very passionate about, and that's taking care of the city employees. And I know that the Raleigh firefighters put you top of their slate card. They're big fans because of your commitment to the city employees. So if you would spend a moment or two telling me about your past, present, and future toward supporting our employees.
Yeah, well, the city doesn't work if there's not folks who are doing the work. I mean, the city really stands on the shoulders of our city workers. And I think we have the best municipal workforce in the country, and we need to support them. We need to give them the tools that they need to do their jobs. We need to provide them with adequate compensation and adequate training and resources. And so that has been a priority of mine, particularly with the fire department that you mentioned. They were not receiving any sort of allocation for education. And so I was able to, with the support of the city council and working with the city manager's office, we were able to get that enacted in the most recent budget. And so now they get additional compensation for their education and training. But one thing for the fire department that I'm also interested in getting put into motion would be a separation allowance. A separation allowance is kind of like a gap pay between the time that you leave the service and when you're eligible to collect regular retirement. And this is a benefit that is already provided to law enforcement officers through the state government, but it is not provided to the fire department. And what we have seen and what I've learned from speaking with firefighters is the risks of their job are unique. You have a higher risk of respiratory illness or cancer, more wear and tear on their body, and they see folks retiring earlier than normal retirement age. And so there's a gap in benefits and pay. And this separation allowance is really a bridge. And so what will happen is some folks will qualify for it. There are terms. You have to be in the service for a certain period of time, qualifying service, all these things. But it's not a prolonged payment. It's basically a bridge until you get to retirement age. So folks will roll into the separation allowance, and then they'll reach retirement age. They'll roll off. New people will roll in. So it's not a ballooning sort of payment. It's cyclical. And
Right.
we are working right now with the city manager's office and the members of the fire department on figuring out how much will it cost, how can we pay for it, how can we implement it. And so I'm interested in seeing that get across the finish line. And we have also funded a comprehensive compensation study for the entire organization, all city workers, to make sure benchmarking nationally and locally, to make sure that they are being paid fairly.
Yes.
At least as much as their peers, if not more. We're the capital city, and I think we should be the leader, particularly on supporting our city workers. And so I'm interested to see what the results of that compensation study say, and then I'm interested in funding the results of that compensation study over the next 2 budget cycles.
Well, you touched on something. Our city employees deserve to be able to live in the city in which they serve.
That's right. That's
And
right.
what I'm hearing out is the term livable wage. And I don't really know how to calculate that, but we certainly want all of our employees to make at least a livable wage so they can reside in Raleigh.
That's right. And there's 2 ways to do that. One, we have to increase their wages, and we have to get the overall cost of housing down too. And that's for our city employees, and that's for everyone. And we're working on both of those things. But I absolutely believe that our city workers should be able to live in the city where they work. And to do that, we have to pay them more, and we have to reduce the cost of housing. And that helps everybody. And so I'm really committed to those, initiatives. We've done a lot of work on them over the past few years, and there's just a few things that I really want to get across the finish line this term.
Well, speaking of terms, we have another 2-year term
Right.
for every council, but then certain ones go after this election to a 4-year term so that we have staggered so that we never lose a whole council in one election. Are the at-large seats one of those that will go to 4-year terms after the 2026 election?
Yes. And so what will happen is for a long time, the city of Raleigh elected its council every 2 years. So the whole board is up at the same time. For a while, it was through nonpartisan runoff. It switched when we moved to even years to nonpartisan plurality. Practically speaking, though, we were already electing people through plurality because there were very few runoffs that ever happened in the city of Raleigh. And I think only one ever changed the outcome of a race. So we were practically electing through plurality. And that's how most of Wake County, the towns and cities, elect through plurality. However, to try to get some better governance in place, we are moving to 4-year staggered terms with a nonpartisan primary. So what that means is beginning in 26, half of the city council will be running for a 2-year term. The other half will be running for a 4-year term. There will be a primary in March of 26 that will narrow each council race down to ensure that whoever wins gets a majority of the votes on election day. And then in 28, the council members who had run for a 2-year term in 26 will be running for a 4-year term. And so after 2028, we will be fully on cycle to have half of the council, everybody serving 4-year terms, but half being up every 2 years. And what that does is you still get to vote for your city council every 2 years. There will still always be a council race on your ballot. If voters are dissatisfied with the direction of the city, they have the opportunity to replace half of the city council. I will tell you, I have served on 2 previous councils, 2019 to 22. I was a group of 5 new people who came in, 22 to 24. There's a group of 4 new people who come in. Anytime you replace 4 or 5 people, it substantially alters your ability to do things, how you're doing things. And so voters still get that opportunity. But what it does is it allows for folks to sort of develop their leadership a bit more. As we were just discussing, it takes a really long time to get anything done. And so for problems and policies to take effect, I think it gives a little more breathing room. And it also provides a bit more stability to residents and to city staff. To your question, yes, the at-large seats will be on the staggered cycle, and they're actually going to be split. So right now, the at-large race is always a free-for-all. It's top 2 vote getters. So many people file at large. Right. Beginning in 26, both at-large seats will be on your ballot, but they will be split. So it'll say, I think, at-large 1, at-large 2. And folks who are filing for those seats will have to pick, am I filing for at-large 1? Am I filing for at-large 2? The seat I currently sit in will be a 2-year term in 26 on the ballot. The seat that Councilmember Fort is sitting in will be the 4-year term on the ballot. And then the mayor also will go on one of the cycles, and then each of the districts. I don't quite remember the split. I just remember my seat is a 2-year seat in 26. Councilmember Fort's is a 4-year seat in 26. But there will always be an at-large person on your ballot every election, and then you'll have the mayor every 4 years, and then you'll have council as well, districts as well.
Well, Councilmember Lambert-Melton, that was one of the many things you've worked on. I do appreciate you spending some time with me. Before I let you go, if there are any questions from my audience and they want to reach out to you, what is the preferred method that they reach out to you?
Well, so obviously email is usually best, jonathan.melton@raleighnc.gov. If you Google my name, it will appear in the Google search on the City of Raleigh website. I'm also very responsive on social media. All of my social media is at Melton4 Raleigh. So at Melton4 Raleigh. You can always reach me on I think Blue Sky is the new one I just registered for. Everyone seems to be doing that. Instagram, Twitter/X, Facebook. I'm on Reddit. I try to be as active on Reddit as I can. So you can find me on social media or you can find me via email. And my personal cell phone is also on my campaign website, jonathanmelton.com. So you can call and text me too.
I'll also say that you've hosted many in-person meetings for the citizens throughout the years at small businesses, which I'm very grateful for. Councilmember Lambert-Melton, you're a fine city council member. Your commitment to doing what's right, your level of engagement, as well as just the deep knowledge you bring is gratefully appreciated, obviously, by the numbers of your reelection. Any last messages for my audience before I let you go?
Just want to say thank you. And you mentioned my office hours. I will have those up and running again in early 2025. So look for my website and social media. I'll start posting where I'm going to be. I'm going to get all over the city again to some locally owned businesses. And I greatly enjoy that time we all spend together there.
Raleigh, hear me now, believe me later. Councilmember Lambert-Melton is here to serve you. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to do it. I highly encourage you to take a moment, if nothing else, to say hey and introduce yourself and be ready, because I hope he'll be running again in 2 years to bring this level of commitment again to our city. Thank you, Councilmember Lambert-Melton.
Thank you very much.
All right. We'll see you, Raleigh.